So, hello and welcome to the 2018 Faculty Development Series. We're talking about discussion questions. My name is Tom Mason. I'm the EAC for the School of Professional Studies. Today we'll discuss the use of discussion forums at Aspen University. Now, for most of us, the use of discussion forums seems pretty intuitive. I mean, seriously, having an online discussion is fairly intuitive for all of us, isn't it? Certainly there's a sense that discussion forums are easy to manage and don't require a lot of heavy lifting. So I have a challenge for all of the professors here today. Try to find something that you didn't already know in this presentation. Write down those one or two things that might be new. And at the end, we'll compile a list. Just to give you an overview of what we'll cover today. For some people who might only be on audio, I'll read these slides. I don't usually read slides, but particularly in a classroom I don't. I know that everybody's an adult and can read. But if you're on a phone, you won't be able to see these, so I'll go through them quickly. The topics for today: the value of discussion questions, why do we use them? The new standard for posting the discussions by faculty, and grading guidelines, just to go over and sort of have a baseline or norm on how we actually grade discussions. The UK Guardian recently reported that traditional university students in Great Britain were dissatisfied with school for two main reasons: limited interaction with faculty and not working hard enough. Do either of these two surprise anyone? Now, some of us may believe that most students don't really want the professor's eyes focused on them. Other than the occasional teacher's pet, most students just want to get through the course and pass the class. But in fact, the National Survey of Student Engagement consistently finds that young adults on traditional campuses and older adults in the online environment want to be seen as colleagues working toward greater knowledge. Vincent Tinto and Scott Swale are two names associated with robust studies of student retention and satisfaction in college. Their volumes of writing point to socialization with both peers and professors as important variables on the subjects of student retention and success. Not working hard enough, in the case of the second point, or an easy A, was also a factor in dissatisfaction among students. Most students want to earn their grade fairly. Some even become frustrated when peers who don't put forth any effort seem to receive the same grade. And this is often reflected in student surveys. When students rate a professor highly but rate a college low, one reason is that the professor gave them an unearned A. They would feel it's unfair to trash the professor who gave them the A on their student survey, so instead they point to the school as having limited value. The assumption is that the school accepts this behavior. After all, they hired the professor. Not working hard enough is another area of dissatisfaction. Students may gripe about how much college work they must accomplish all the way up to the time they finish the class or they graduate. Then they reflect with a fulfilling sense of pride on making it through after having done hard work. Have you ever had an easy course and felt a bit empty after earning an A from an easy instructor? Some of us definitely have. I know my master's degree was done at a state university here in Arizona, and it was much easier than my bachelor's program. And I sort of, even though I learned, I don't feel like I was pushed enough to sort of plumb those depths of knowledge and education. So I enrolled in a doctoral program to try to make up for that. The first area we talked about, value discussion questions. These are four main concepts we'll go over. That's to expand specific concepts within the classroom. That's a discussion question can definitely expand on those concepts that we may not be able to cover in the DQs or in assignment. We know that even in a tradition, our lecture meant what's in the textbook. Also, now that every student has a voice, we can use discussion questions to areas not covered by the assignment. And the fourth value, iterative interactions, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. So in the expansion of concepts, DQs present concepts of learning, objectives that relate back to the competencies students must master grasp the body of knowledge we require them to learn. DQs are often phrased as furthering discussion, even debate among the class. They require read, research, or practice a principle and to respond to the postings of others. DQs are intentionally used to help build a community within an online classroom. Now, probably most of us have taught in traditional class. Students don't know each other even after the first few weeks. It sometimes requires focused effort by us as group projects, student presentations, or other instruments to try to build some organization inside the classroom. Now, who can provide clarity on the concepts covered in each module of study? Who's the referee of these? Well, to provide deeper clarity, and professors are expected to contribute to students their perspectives, and faculty through reinforcement of behavior. Each student has a voice and must use it. This is the advantage online education has over traditional classrooms. Traditional classroom, a shy or unsure student may choose not to participate. In the online classroom, everyone is required to use their voice. Sort of social loafing, sitting in the back of the room, passing notes, permitted in the online environment. Those shy, unsure students still exist out there and in our classrooms. In fact, if you have a degree but didn't want a room full of people to take classes, maybe? Now, Vincent Tinto found 3 reasons students leave college: difficulties, inability to match educational goals, and failing to become or remain part of the institution's intellectual social life. How do we do that online? It's part of our educators to provide timely reinforcement to students who are insecure in their own thoughts. Our reinforcement, their future academic behavior, integrating them as part of the intellectual discourse at the university. We can only accomplish this duty if we're present in the forums and timely with our interactions. So how can we timely forums and be present at the same time? Well, we come to the discussions and receive notification for each of the comments. However, in a large class as nursing officer, that may wear out your phone battery as notifications linked to your email. The online environment is asynchronous. Aspen does not expect us to respond to forum posts as if they were instant messages, but we must still be timely in the way we respond. I do give a chance to express thoughts in my class, chime in, and provide highly educated reinforcement. And what I do is generally scan through discussion questions before I actually get involved. I want to make sure that everyone is participating. 2 discussion questions and 1 assignment may not be enough to cover everything I want them to know, but I can provide additional information inside the discussion questions to expand their knowledge. And ways I can do that. Now, in a traditional classroom, there may not also be time to cover all the content in the lectures, classroom discussions, and assignments. Here again, the difference between the traditional and online modalities reveals another benefit to online learning. Just as traditional lecture complements the textbook and other references, the discussion forums become the place to prod students toward more learning in the way that we can add probing questions to their initial posts or their responses. We can also post articles that expand their knowledge inside the discussion forum, and we can add videos. Now, we know that reaching out to students with different learning styles is very important. Articles are good, videos are good, both of them together, even better. Let's take a look at an example of some feedback and some interaction inside a classroom. This class was actually advanced criminal procedure, and the question was about grand jury testimony and be compelled to testify to the jury. The first student, very good, posed. Can't see it all on the screen here, but number of words, put a somewhat style reference in there, definitely referenced the, and the professor comes back to ask a question then. Why they can be compelled to testify at a grand jury. What about illegally obtained evidence? Would it be permitted in a grand jury? So we're going beyond just witness testimony in this question and expanding into illegally obtained evidence at the same time. The student replies, very good response in replying to the instructor, telling that, yeah, you absolutely can be compelled to testify in the grand jury. And what we talked about as far as evidence, no matter where it comes from in a grand jury hearing, a trial, can be used, whether it's illegally obtained or not. So the professor replies with a positive remark, absolutely correct, gives the information. Grand juries are seeking to determine probable cause exists to hold a trial. Witnesses have no right to withhold information in these cases and can be charged if found to lie, and then provides a link to an NPR article about a recent event in Ferguson, Missouri. If you remember back to Ferguson, Missouri in 2015, this real-world example further expands the boundaries of the discussion. So in this case, the correct answer is witnesses can be compelled to testify, and if they lie, they can be found to have perjured themselves inside there. So this string provides students, every student who reads this post, some expanded knowledge. And because we're experts in our field, we should be able to come up with this fairly quickly without a lot of effort. And as you teach the class, you'll have more and more resources that you'll be able to employ inside the discussion question thread. All right, so just a quick recap of the value of discussion question. It improves interaction. We would post a reply thread. We confirm the important question by doing that. Specific examples of academic success, or we reinforce their behavior. Make sure that they know that they're on track, particularly for the unsure students. Build the discussion by adding links to websites, studies, to give a deeper understanding of the information that's being presented in the class. And it also shows that we're interested in the topic as well, and that we do the information, the knowledge, expertise that students rely on to ask us probing questions in return. And finally, we want to bring the world into our discussion posts. I tend to use this phrase a lot, that the application of learning is an inherent value of education. And another way that I might phrase that is that all knowledge is useless if it can't be applied to the real world. Now, I know there is some esoteric knowledge out there that we might enjoy, but again, we're getting some value out of that through the enjoyment of art and other things. One other point I wanted to discuss, the last point, was iterative interactions. Now, this simply means that each participant in the course feels safe when responding to others, and so they build a conversation in the forum. The conversation may even adopt a warm, personal tone rather than that staunchly stoic and studious academic tone. Now, in their initial posts, we want them to be academic in nature. And then later on, as we begin the discussion inside the discussion forum, we can add on to that and relate that to the real world in a way that they can relate to. This is a subordinate goal of DQs, being iterative interactions. It builds that socialization that Vincent Tinto talked about and is so important to retaining students. A couple things to remember, that when we're in the discussion forums, and we use these iterative interactions, excuse me, it demonstrates sort of that comfortable intellectual discourse that colleagues have. And we want, students, like I said, particularly in the online environment, we tend to get an older demographic of students. They may be the same age as us, maybe some who are older, and they want to feel like their peers and their colleagues inside there. Now, we still, it doesn't mean the monkeys run the zoo. We're still in charge of the classroom, but it doesn't mean that we have to be, I guess, more, I want to say, fastidious in the way we present to them. That adds a personable touch to the sort of that sterile modality of online learning. In a classroom, professors can crack jokes, they can talk to students, they can get to know the students. In the online modality, it's a little bit more difficult to do that, so we can add this personable touch to the online environment. Remember to distribute your feedback equally among all your students. Students can count. They can see how many times you responded to one student rather than others. We want them to all feel included in the discussion forum. And then finally, we want to stay focused. We want to stay focused on academics. While we can be personable, we still want to make sure that we're creating an academic group, not just a social group online. So let's take a look at another quick example of a classroom. This one is later on in a class. This is, I believe, the 7th week of a class. And so students have become, there's a rapport that's been built between the professor and the students. So the first student's post is not shown. It's above the cut on this page. I couldn't fit it all on one page and still make it legible for anybody who's reading this through a laptop or a desktop or a tablet. But I wanted to show what happened after that. After the student's post, student number 2 replies. That student is also an active police officer, and so that individual was able to provide more information into that discussion. The professor replies, with a response, it's odd, but everybody seems to like the Iowa Department of Public Safety. And that's because the student's first post mentioned the Iowa Department of Public Safety, and Ogle is the author of the textbook. So the professor adds, I think Ogle lives in Iowa. Then goes back to the academic side to see another interesting article, not from Iowa. This one's about recovering written information from burned documents, and then the professor provides a link, a PDF, a study on how to recover information from burned documents. Student 2 then replies, I hear Iowa's nice, although I haven't been there yet. So again, it's personable, but then at the end he mentions that he did read the link and he found interesting how the writing could be pulled out of burnt paper using infrared photography. So this later in the class, there's some personal interactions in there. It's not like we're asking each other to go out for a beer, but we are replying outside of the academics initially and then focusing back in on academics, because that's why we're there initially. That's why we're there most importantly, is to make sure students learn, but we do again want to build that socialization. To give you sort of the other side of the coin, we have this response. So this is the entire thread for one of the professors. And in this, they're talking about project management. And the student provides a very good outline of project management, something that the student finds very important to them. And they mention a project, the Asian and Pacific Network for Testing of Agricultural Machinery, or ANTAM. The professor's response is, good post. Okay, so they give it a little feedback and then names the student, welcome back. But what more could the professor have done with this discussion question? I want to open it up to the floor. Anybody who wants to respond, if you want to enable your microphone, what might have been a better professor? Is typing. The dogs are barking. All right, what they did correctly. Absolutely right. That's a good point. You can provide that. Anything else? In a timely manner. You notice this is 8 days student posted. Student February 9th. The professor posts on February 17th. Now, to be fair to the professor, this class actually started on the student was able to get in on the 9th. So did he meet days? Yeah, he still met the 7th. All right. Nina says provocative questions to further discussion. All right, very good. You know, for me, professor, if I'm taking, I want to know why is this so important to this? How can I relate this back to that real world concern that the student has? So I might ask him, tell me more about the Antam Regional Network. Why is testing of agricultural machinery important? Joel Whalen's actually. And as we go through, I'll show you. We can go into, we see the Module 2 discussions. And you'll see the discussion questions are posted here for you already when you enter the class, but they're not in a thread. Click on the discussions here, we can actually start it. And this is what we'll do as faculty, is we'll start a new thread and post both of those in there. And then you'll, if you can see the screen, Module 2, I see a subscribe button. So I'm already subscribed to these posts. If I click, it says subscribe, and I click on it, it'll subscribe me automatically. So once the posts are made, all the replies, how do I now are used to going in by next to Module 2 where the thread is and going in to assess. If we click on the student, you'll see that we can add topic score and we can add here. However, this is not the best to provide an assessment to students because there is rubric loaded inside here. This is a quick way to, so let me cancel out of that. And instead, I'm going to go to the grade book. Once the grade book opens, I'll go to discussion 2. I'll click the down arrow, and on screen you'll see that 2 of these have already been graded. The third one has yet to be graded. And under the assessment column, on that icon, it is up the rubric for me. Now this is not the standard rubric for DQs. This is an example DQ rubric. Inside here, I can pick the levels that the students have met, the criteria. So if criteria 1 is critical thinking, if criteria 2 is coverage, maybe a 3, and then for 6, I might give them another 4. Here's the quantitative assessment of the students' completed discussion question. To qualitative, I would click on the pencil that's feedback. And here is where I can add directly into the rubric that the student will see. Click on the rubric. They'll get feedback inside this box by just typing whatever I want to type. So, spell it right. You considered the reasons that juries compel testimony and add it to the discussion. Once I hit save, that's saved inside here. Now another thing is, because I marked these 3 areas, it gives me a points assessment at the bottom and it gives me 11 points. Once I hit save, I can close this window and I can add that 11 here, the grade column, save and close, and it'll take me straight to the grade book. So I can see where the student's at as far as I can skim over how they've done throughout the discussions of the week. So I get an overall picture of the student inside the grade book I post using the rubric. Rubrics are the grade for us to assess discussion questions and definitely for our assignments. Just to recap a little bit on lines, always use the rubric. Specific feedback provides both formative and summative assessments, but in every case, feedback will help the student become a much better student. And that's what we're really looking for. Now, some examples that we might use here on specific feedback. We want an example of the behavior that the student used and reference to the content. So the first one, great explanation highlighting the obvious shortcomings of jury selection. That's a short point, but it shows that I'm focused. It doesn't just say great job. So many classes I've been in throughout my different levels of education where every week I had the same response from the faculty member. Great job, great job, great job, great job. To me, that really doesn't mean anything. It's sort of phatic communion. Phatic communion is when you meet somebody that you know quite well and you say, hi, how you doing? We're not really asking how they're doing. We're just greeting them. And that's the way I sort of view those great jobs. So in this case, I want to show that we're on target. The academic content is being referenced inside our assessment. And you can get much more detailed if you'd like, definitely. The second example, the example provided regarding Twain's later writings needed more explanation, period. Or I could go deeper into that if I want, again. But at least inside here, we're giving them some reasons why or how they can improve. Right? So those are examples of specific feedback. Again, on screen, if you're not on a computer and can't read this, the use of the rubric also helps in two other ways. It provides a long-term record of the feedback that you provided and the grade that the student earned. And it lets the staff resolve student questions on your behalf. So if a student calls, and we'll get students. Students are going to complain on two sides of this coin. Some complain that the professor graded too harshly. In fact, we recently had a student complain that we're grading like it's Harvard, but we're only a DEAC school, so lighten up. Hey, sorry, you're in school, whether it's Aspen or Harvard, we're going to expect you to learn, and we're going to push you as far as we can inside the classroom. Others might complain that we don't grade at all. We just give A's or great jobs. In my estimation, that's the greatest error we can make as professors, is to simply give A's. And students will complain about that because the ones that did the hardest work, the most work, are going to complain that their buddies got the same grade that they got. So some students, not all students, but some students will complain whether you're doing your job or not. It's always better that we're found to do our jobs when that complaint comes. And then the staff can open up the classroom and see the rubric. If the course is still running, or if the information from the classroom is archived, the rubrics can be recovered no matter what, and it provides us a way to view the feedback for each specific artifact. So instead of calling us in the middle of the day to ask a question about why we graded somebody a certain way, the staff can resolve this. Student services, even Joel gets involved in student issues when students want to know more about why they were graded a certain way. All right, so that's the grading guidelines. All right, and so today, was there anything new that was provided to you? Is there anything that you saw today that you didn't know already, or that emphasized or expanded on a point regarding discussion questions? Again, if you want to unmute your microphones, you can, or you can also chat. Nina, we are the Harvard of the DEAC. All right, how to get instant notification discussions from Bill. And Nina, I don't know why we're making the change to repost the post. Okay, you did not know. All right, and so that adds, like we mentioned, that streamlines everything for us as professors, but also for us, because a lot of times in D2L we have to post first in order to even reply to a student. We get that out of the way right up front. We post the discussion question. Now we're enabled inside that module and we're able to provide feedback. Any other questions? Emily, Waleed, Dr. Campbell? Right? You might want to mention about setting up to roll out on certain dates. Maybe I didn't mention, again, if you go in on day one of week one, you can post all the discussion questions for all 10 modules, and you can enable them to activate on a certain date. And if you go in initially and you set up that discussion question, take a look at it and look at editing that discussion question after you enter it, and look for that setup information. Thank you, Peter. Bill asked, to post discussions, do we have to go into each one to find the questions? And they'll be inside that. Once you open the module, module 2, the discussion questions are in there right in the initial sort of content overview of the module. So you'll be able to find the questions every time you enter a module. Richard Barkdale, thank you, Richard. I mentioned the DQ rubric. Definitely take a look at those rubrics. They're there for you to use. And again, they're there for us to be able to go assess students at a later date. And we can do this for institutional assessment as well. So in the first year of a student's attendance at Aspen to the fourth year, is there a difference in the way they presented? Well, we can see that by pulling some artifacts out there. Thank you, Emily. I see Peter's typing. All right. Thank you very much. If you want a copy of these slides, if you send me your email at tom.mason@aspen.edu, I can either send you the slideshow, or more than likely what I'll do is I'll post it to Google Drive, and then you'll be able, using your email, I'll give you access. Now, when you send me an email, please send me a Gmail that you have, because that makes it easier for you to get into Google, access Google. If you prefer to get the slideshow will also include the notes pages, so you can take a look at it. You can use it, refer back to it later if you have any questions. And I'm always available at tom.mason@aspen.edu, and in the event you have questions or you need some clarification. Also, Joel's available. Joel helps out the faculty with these questions as well. You're all very welcome, and thank you very much for attending today. We'll end the discussion, we'll end the actual presentation here. Back into the classroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks. Thank you all for coming.